Alright guys, working on a 2009 Hyundai Sonata with the 2.4 liter 4-cylinder. Customer complaints to check engine light. We can see it's illuminated on the dash. Car's running okay, so we're going to go right to the scan tool and see what trouble codes we have. Already have the vehicle identified. It's going to hit OK on this. I'm going to go right to the engine menu. Go to codes. And the code we have in memory is a P0456, a EVAP system, very small leak. Some history on this car. It had a fuel cap replaced about a month ago, and I'm guessing it was probably in pursuit of fixing this problem. It clearly did not. It's still here, so we're going to troubleshoot this. I'm not exactly certain what sort of EVAP system this is, whether it's like a kiosk system using some sort of leak detection pump or natural vacuum style system, or if it's just like a run-of-the-mill system using a vent valve and purge solenoid to do all of the evaporative system monitoring. So I'm going to go to the troubleshooter first, just in hopes that it will give me that information and I have a little bit better idea of how I want to troubleshoot this. So I'm going to click back. I'm going to go to the troubleshooter. We're obviously under the engine, going to code tips. This is a P0456 code is what we're looking for here, guys. And all I'm really looking for is this. I just want to know what sort of system we are dealing with here, whether this is like some sort of NVLD system or just a run-of-the-mill system, similar to what GM and Ford uses on a lot of their cars, with just a purge valve and a vent solenoid. So looking at this trigger information, the ECM closes the canister close valve, which is going to be the vent valve, at the charcoal canister to seal off the evaporative emission system, and then opens the purge valve to generate a vacuum in the tank. After vacuum generation, the ECM measures pressure differential curve in the fuel tank and sets DTC P0442 or P0456 if the vacuum generated within a monitoring period increases above a defined threshold. So what we know off of that is this is just a run-of-the-mill EVAP system. It's going to use a purge solenoid to pull the fuel tank into a vacuum, and it's going to use a canister vent solenoid. They're calling it the canister close valve here, to seal the system off. What should happen is the engine computer closes the vent valve and energizes the purge solenoid, and by monitoring fuel tank pressure, it's going to pull the tank down into a vacuum. It's then going to close the purge solenoid, and what the engine computer should see is it should see that vacuum holding into the fuel tank. If that vacuum dissipates, pretty quick, guys, what the engine computer interprets that as is a leak. Just about every time when I see this code, there is an actual leak in the system. Not sure where it's going to be. So I'm just staying in the driver's seat here, guys, and I want to get some information as far as what sort of leak we're dealing with and potentially what we're looking at here. So I want to pull up some relative or some related EVAP data, and I want to take a look at that and get an idea of the current state of the evaporative emission system. So that's coming up next. Alright guys, so I've got 3 pits pulled up just as kind of a baseline here. We can see that our canister close valve is currently electrically off. What that means is that the valve is open and it is currently venting. For purge duty cycle, we have this 3% number here. I'm fairly certain at this low of a duty cycle, this valve isn't actually open. So pretty sure that the purge valve is going to be closed during this. And then if we look at this tank pressure number, we're reading 0 inches. So this is pretty much indicating atmospheric pressure in this system right now, just as a quick baseline. That really doesn't give us too much direction based off the fact that this vent valve is currently off, so it's open and it's venting. Yeah, so I think the easiest next step is going to be to see if we have any sort of functional test where we can run this purge valve and look for a response in this fuel tank pressure sensor. Maybe we'll find a test where we can do both. We can close the vent valve over the scan tool and open the purge valve. So I'm just going to click back on this. And I'm going to go to functional test first, see what we have here. Engine running tests. The vehicle is running currently. And looking through this menu, all we have is some injector disable functions and some O2 heater stuff, so that's not going to help us. Engine off test is also not going to help us because what I really need to do is energize this purge solenoid. So we're going to go to system tests. And yeah, there we go. We have an EVAP monitor test. I don't deal with these Hyundais a whole lot, so I'm not super familiar with this, so we'll be learning together. So let's read this. This test used for functional check of the EVAP system and leakage check, condition, vehicle stop, fuel level below 80. No DTCs present. Well, we have one. Maybe it'll still let us do it. Engine at idle, engine warmed up. We are warmed up. Cycle key off for at least 5 minutes before retrying this evaporative leakage test. So we're just going to click yes. I just heard the idle speed kick up, guys. It looks like this is going to run this test for us so we can watch it in real time. So I'm just going to graph these. It says test in progress, please wait. We see a response here on this tank pressure number. What really stinks is I don't have any purge solenoid or vent information here, and this is all they're allowing me to look at, so that's really pretty crappy. But we'll just follow these cues. Wow. So that helped us absolutely none. So pretty much what this boils down to is we're going to need to test this system completely manually. We're also going to need to energize the vent solenoid manually if we need to do a smoke test on this, which I'm fairly certain we're going to need to. So yeah, I'm going to get the hood popped, see if I can eyeball where this purge valve lives, because we're going to use that as kind of a main hub into the EVAP system, and I'll get you guys on that and we'll see what we see. Alright, so this is the vehicle, guys. What I'm really looking for is the purge solenoid, and I found it. It's on the driver's side of the valve cover, and it's this electrical connector right here. It's kind of tucked away. This electrical connector comes in, and this unit right here that I'm pointing to is the purge solenoid. It has a vacuum line coming off of it right here, and this vacuum line goes into a metal pipe here and connects to this hose that I'm shaking. One easy, quick check to do with these systems is to pull this hose off, go into the purge solenoid, disconnect the electrical connector. This is a normally closed solenoid, so when we disconnect this electrical connector, we should not feel vacuum coming through it. So that's a really quick, easy check to identify a leaking purge solenoid. It's something we're going to have to do anyways to smoke test the system, because I'm going to use this hose to plug the smoke machine into. So, you know, we're kind of getting two tests in one by disconnecting this hose and disconnecting this connector. So I'm going to get all that disconnected, and then we're going to check for vacuum out of this purge solenoid in its de-energized state. Alright guys, so for this purge solenoid quick test, all I've done is I've disconnected this electrical connector, and I have the hose going to the tank side of the purge solenoid disconnected. I'm just reaching around this hose, and there's a little metal pipe back here that comes from the purge solenoid. I'm just sticking my finger over it. I'm feeling for vacuum. I currently don't feel anything. So that's a pretty decent test for the purge solenoid. If you have a purge solenoid that's leaking, you'll usually catch it with this test. You know, you'll disconnect this electrical connector, and you'll place your hand here on the canister side of the purge solenoid, and you'll feel vacuum if it's leaking. I don't feel that on this one, so I don't believe a leaking purge solenoid is our issue. The next easy step I want to do is I want to manually energize this purge solenoid while we monitor fuel tank pressure, and I want to see a response in that, and that's going to kind of prove out that the fuel tank pressure sensor is indeed working. So that's coming up next. Alright guys, so my hopes with this test are I want to manually energize this purge solenoid and pull this tank into a vacuum myself, and then evaluate what sort of leak we're dealing with. Right now I've got the vehicle lifted up. As you can see right here above this kind of rear subframe area, that's going to be the canister. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for the canister vent solenoid. If we follow this hose here, coming off of this canister, that one that I'm kind of focused on right there, when we follow this up, we see an inline filter. And if we follow that up, it goes kind of in the left rear wheel well area, and up there I can see the EVAP vent solenoid. It's kind of tough to see. But what we need to do to run this test manually is we need to seal this EVAP system, and we can do that one of two ways. What the engine computer does is it energizes the vent solenoid that lives up there, which closes the valve and seals the tank off. I'm not about to get up there, at least not yet, to manually energize this. So just for direction purposes, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clamp this hose off here with a pair of vice grips or something like that, and we're going to mechanically seal the vent valve, seal the system, and then we can run this test manually ourselves by energizing the purge solenoid up front under the hood. Some things to think about: if everything looks good when we do this test up there, and we have this hose going to this vent valve sealed off at the time, what that really suggests is a vent valve problem, because we have taken that out of the EVAP system. I don't see a whole lot of issues with these Hyundais regarding EVAP problems, so I'm not sure if the vent valve on this particular vehicle is a high failure component or not, but we'll have a little bit more direction once we execute this test. So like I said, all I'm going to do, I'm going to put a pair of vice grips on this hose right here to isolate the vent valve and seal the system, and then we're going to energize the purge solenoid manually up front and see what our fuel tank pressure readings do. So yep, that's what we're going to do. So quick shot of the setup here, guys. All I did was I just took some vice grips and I clamped that hose off. All this is doing is it's isolating the EVAP system for us. So yeah, I just wanted to show that to you guys real quick. Alright guys, so I've got a T-pin installed in the control wire of this purge solenoid. This is a ground side switch solenoid. I have a test light here and it's connected to ground. You see when it finds a power feed, it lights. This is a pretty hot test light. I use this one primarily for doing stuff like this and energizing solenoids manually. So what I have pulled up on the scan tool here, it'll focus. Let me turn this light off. Come on. But hopefully you guys can see that. But what we see is we see this tank pressure number, and to the left we also see a commanded duty cycle. The engine computer is actually opening this purge solenoid right now, and we can look at this pressure inches PID to the right, and we see the tank's being pulled into a small amount of vacuum. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to keep you guys focused on this. I'm just using my test light. I'm going to open this purge solenoid wide open, and we're going to look for a response in this purge solenoid data PID, or excuse me, this tank pressure data PID. So I'm just touching on and off on this purge solenoid now. What I'm attempting to do is to pull this tank into a pretty heavy vacuum. So the engine's stumbling real bad. This purge solenoid's pretty much wide open. And the lowest our tank pressure reading got was this negative 0.7. So what this means, guys, is one of two things. Either, for one, this tank pressure sensor is bad, or at least there's a problem with it and it's not reacting to the pressure changes in the tank. What it could also mean is that there is a absolutely huge, enormous leak in the system. So the easiest thing to rule out, and remember we have the vent valve isolated at this point, is a leak. So what I'm going to do for that is we're going to do a smoke test of the system. I'm going to get the machine set up and I'm going to show you the steps involved in doing that. Alright guys, this is the basic setup for the smoke test. The hose from the smoke machine is going to this hose here that's going down in the purge solenoid. You can see I have a little bit of a leak here. Not really a big deal for this test. Here's the smoke machine. There's some air supply hooked up to the back of this, and then we just have some leads going to the battery to power it. While we do this test, one of the PIDs I'm going to be looking at are this tank pressure sensor number. You can currently see it's at this 0.2 range here, 0.2 inches of mercury. So all I'm going to do at this point is I'm just going to turn this on. Remember, we still have the vent hose going to the vent valve clamped. So I'm just going to press this, and what we should do, or what we should see, is we should see a response in this tank pressure data PID. and then obviously we're going to begin pumping smoke into the EVAP system. So I'm just going to hit the switch now, and we're just watching this number. We see we jump back up to this 0.2. Not really seeing any other response other than that. Again, this could indicate a sensor issue or potentially a humongous catastrophic leak in the EVAP system. The code we had in memory was for a small leak, so let's just keep that in mind. We just saw it jumped up to 0.5 there. Definitely not a very clean operation on this sensor. I'm not sure if that's normal for this particular vehicle or for the scan data I'm using for it or not, but it's reacting to this. So the next thing I want to check, and, I've got the vehicle on a hoist here, is we want to check the most suspect location for these sorts of things, and that's going to be the fuel cap. So I've just got this fuel door open at this point, and we're looking at this cap. I don't believe there's going to be an issue with the cap on this one, guys, just because it was replaced. But one thing I need to do is I need to ensure that I am getting smoke into the system. So I'm just going to pull this cap off, and I'm going to take a look in this hole. And what I'm looking for is smoke to come out. Smoke coming out of this is telling me that our connections are good, and we are in fact pumping smoke into this system. On some of these vehicles, you won't get smoke back there from testing at the purge solenoid. You need to hook up somewhere on the canister. So I've just got this cap off currently, and what I'm waiting for is I'm waiting for smoke to start billowing out of this, and that's really going to tell me that we have this system filled up with smoke, and we can trust our smoke test from that point. If we don't get any smoke out of this, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to change the location of our smoke test, and we're going to need to do it somewhere directly on the canister. That's going to be pretty crappy if we do, because a lot of these lines back here aren't easily accessible. So I'm going to let the smoke machine run for a little bit, see if we can get smoke coming out of this, and if we can't, we're going to have to hook it up directly at the canister. So stand by. Yeah, so I've been throwing smoke at this system for about a minute now, and I don't see any smoke back here. There's clearly smoke coming out of the machine. So what this tells us pretty much is we need to choose a different test location for our smoke machine. So we need to get hooked up to somewhere on the canister. I'm going to get all that set up, show you where I hooked up, and then we'll continue the test from there. Alright guys, so Hyundai's doing us pretty dirty on this one. The only test location I could find was this hose right here. That hooks into that metal pipe you can see up there. All I did to tie into this is I use an adapter from my fuel injection test kit to tie into that. That's going down here to the floor where I have this smoke machine rigged up to my jump box. So this is how we're going to do this. One thing to think about since we disconnected that hose is that metal pipe right there is now a leak. This system is no longer sealed. That's okay. What we're going to do is we're going to pump smoke into this system, and we're going to seal that ourselves. But before we seal it up, what I want to do is I want to use that as a confirmation that we're getting smoke into this system. So we're going to watch that. You can see I have my little switch for this smoke machine hanging off the exhaust here. I'm just going to hit the button. Actually, I'm going to check my connections down here because this machine's not currently turning on, so hold on one second. Alright, so I rechecked my connections, we're all good there. I'm just going to hit this switch. I heard the machine click and turn on. What we're now going to do is we're just going to wash this hose up here, the one we disconnected. This goes up to the filler neck. It's for the ventilation for filling the tank up. And we're just going to watch this, and what I'm looking to happen is I'm looking for smoke to pour out of it. When that happens, we know that we have good smoke in the system, and then we can cap that off, and then we can start hunting around for a leak at that point. So just watching it. This may take a little bit, guys. There's a lot of air in these systems to account for when you're smoke testing. It really kind of sucks that we didn't have any sort of bi-directional controls for this system. It also sucks that we were not able to smoke test this system from up front. That really makes this a lot more difficult. But you know, it's whatever. You gotta do what you gotta do. We have to roll with the punches, and ultimately we're just trying to get this system figured out. I'm still not seeing smoke coming out of this yet, and really I should have smoke out of this thing at this point. So I want to double check a couple things real quick just to make sure my smoke machine is working properly, and then we may revisit where we're hooked into and figure out what we're doing wrong. Alright guys, if I'm honest, I'm getting a little frustrated here, and the only reason for that is this is pretty much my best test location to get into this system, and I can't get any smoke into the system from here. I have the fuel tank off up there, you know, just looking for smoke, and I can't get any smoke to that point. So there's obviously some sort of a check valve involved in whatever hose I'm connected to, but ultimately what it means is that this test location is not going to work. Oh man, this is, you know, this generally isn't this hard on most cars, guys. We're super limited by access to this canister. I'm just thinking about where I can plug into. We do have this vent valve filter here. What we can do is potentially just isolate the vent from the system altogether and just smoke test the tank and canister and look for our leak there. If we don't see a leak there, then that kind of points towards the vent valve itself as being the issue, and we'll have to rip this wheel liner out and access that. So yeah, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug this hose back in and take this larger hose off of this inline filter here and hook my smoke machine into that. And hopefully, crossing our fingers, please, we'll be able to get smoke into the system and troubleshoot it. So I'm going to get that set up. Alright guys, I was finally able to get smoke into this system. And I'm not sure if you guys are going to be able to see it, where it's coming from. This was the connection I used. I'm just adapted into the end of this inline vent for the canister vent valve. If we go way up here, the leak appears to be coming from the canister. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get you guys a shot of it. It's going to be pretty much impossible, guys. This canister is just stuffed in here. I'll prop you guys like that, see if maybe you can see the smoke. Yeah, you guys aren't even going to be able to see it. But basically the area that this is coming from is, if you look at that hose right there, if you look to the very bottom of the canister, it looks like it's coming from the bottom of the canister, maybe underneath this mounting bracket here, above where this sway bar is. We can see a little bit of rust up here. But this canister is definitely leaking. I can't see exactly where from. It's from somewhere underneath it. I really hope you guys can see smoke. But I don't think you guys can see it. But anyways, guys, this was somewhat frustrating, I'll admit, trying to get this thing smoke tested. Definitely a bad canister, definitely a leaking canister. Maybe some of the Hyundai guys out there can offer some advice on smoke testing these, where they found the best test locations to be. I'm sure there's some check valves involved with some of these EVAP circuits, and that's why we weren't getting the results we wanted from this hose here, as well as from the purge solenoid up front. But anyways, I was able to identify this issue from this location here, testing there. So we got a little lucky on that one. As I said, I don't deal with EVAP problems on these very often, so it definitely came with a few challenges, not having bi-directional controls or anything like that. But if you guys have any advice to offer when dealing with these Hyundai EVAP systems, you know, this being a Sonata, you know, offer them up in the comments. You know, we're all here to learn from each other. But as for this one, it needs a canister. Pretty sure the tank's going to have to be pulled to do it. So yeah, that's it. Alright guys, so given the difficulty we had smoke testing this system, I just wanted to look at some more information to get a little bit better of an idea as far as you know, where we went wrong, the issues we were having. The entire time, what I was having difficulty with is I was having difficulty getting smoke out of the fuel fill cap. And generally that's what I use as kind of my rule of thumb to know that the entire system has smoke in it. On this vehicle I wasn't able to get smoke up here, and the reason for that is due to this onboard refueling vapor recovery. Basically guys, this filler neck is pretty much isolated from the rest of the EVAP system. In order to smoke test the filler neck directly, and that includes the fuel cap, is really what we would need to do is this metal hose that we hooked into for the second portion of our test. We started over here at the purge solenoid, and the second place we did was this. We would need to hook up directly to that metal pipe going to the filler neck to smoke test that and the fuel cap properly. Or we would need to use some sort of a fuel cap adapter and do all of our smoke tests from there. I was basing the fact that we didn't have a fully smoked EVAP system off the fact that I didn't have smoke coming out of this. And kind of going back over these diagrams, I think I have an answer for what we were actually seeing here. So our first smoke test location was right here at the purge solenoid. This is this number 13. We had our smoke tester hooked in right here, and we were trying to push smoke in this direction into the system. I think that may have actually worked from that location. And the reason I said in the video that it didn't is because I wasn't seeing smoke out of this filler neck, where on most vehicles typically I will. So I think potentially we did have flow here, and I kind of, switched directions on that based off the fact that I couldn't get smoke out of the filler neck. So let's keep that in mind. For our second test location, we tested right here. We disconnected this hose going to the filler neck, and we pumped smoke in this direction back towards the canister. I also think that potentially that may have worked. We may have been able to pressurize the canister from that location. Again, I changed directions off of that because I still couldn't get smoke out of this filler neck. So, I was starting to get a little frustrated by this point, to be honest, guys. So what we did after that is we changed our test location again, and I'm just going to go to this other diagram. And what I ultimately ended up doing was I disconnected this hose basically from the vent valve, and I put my smoke tester in here, and I pumped smoke in this direction back into the canister. And that's when I actually started looking around for leaks at that point, and that's when I found the leak in this canister. To be honest with you guys, I think this was a mistake on my part. I think I may have potentially seen this canister leak both from testing at the purge solenoid and testing at this other hose that we disconnected going to the filler neck. I think we could have seen this leak from those locations, but I jumped away from them based off the fact that I didn't have smoke in the filler neck. Some things to think about is, because we didn't have smoke in the filler neck, we didn't really test that fuel cap or the filler neck for leaks. In order to do that, what I think we would need to do is we would really need to put some sort of fuel cap adapter on the filler neck, and we would need to do our smoke test from there and pump smoke into the tank, from the actual filler neck. They make adapters for that. I have a book here of a class I attended. I'm not going to show all the information from that, but you can see it's there's a tool pictured here, and that's specifically for use with these onboard refueling vapor recovery systems. And a section of this book kind of goes over this and why you have to do your test from this location. I think that's exactly what we're seeing on the car. So yeah, definitely some variables to this. Don't think you're just going to hook up to the purge solenoid on every car and get smoke all throughout the system. It's absolutely not the case. We definitely need to be aware of what we're working with, and I routinely check to make sure I have smoke from this filler cap. And that's the only way that we really saw this issue, was the visual inspection there to see if we actually had a full system or not. So anyways, hopefully that clears up some of my thinking throughout the video and why I was changing these test locations based off of what I was seeing here. Really, it was kind of a inexperience of this system on my part for that. I don't think I'll be making that mistake again. But just keep in mind the variables with smoke testing these systems for sure. Some of these you may need to change test locations. You may need to smoke test this from the fuel filler cap. You may be able to get away with it just from the purge valve. A lot of Fords and Chevys, I can do this test just from the purge valve and get good flow throughout the whole system. On this Hyundai, that was not the case. I'm sure there are plenty of other vehicles out there just like this. So just keep that in mind. If you're smoke testing a car and you're not finding any leaks, You know, just think about where you're hooked up, think about the style of EVAP system you're dealing with, and maybe change your test location. So that's it, guys. Thanks for watching.